all safe. So that's absolutely critical. That's number one goal. The second goal is to keep our school going, to keep realizing the mission of this school that is 22 years old, and that is a college preparatory school that is committed to the intellectual and personal development of each student in preparation for a purposeful life as a global citizen. If there was ever a time that mission is critical, now is this time when we have a global emergency, and that everything we do is towards helping your children to stay safe, and then helping them to realize this mission. So this is something that we need to bear in mind when we look at all the different questions that we have. Safety is going to be our number one. When I look at your questions, there are some questions, we'll answer the questions that we can, we'll provide the answers that we have at this time. We do not have all the answers. Nobody has, because we've never gone through this before. And so, but we will answer everything we can in a timely manner. I know we have sent home a lot of communication. We try to be proactive about our communication, and we will continue to do so. And we know that, planning, organization, and communication are absolutely critical as we work through this together as a community. I have been extremely impressed with this community. I mean, it's from every aspect of the community, from our students to our teachers to our staff members and to our parents and our admin team. Every member in the community is pulling their weight and working together, and that's what's going to see us through. So let's talk about some of your questions. There was, of course, questions about the social and emotional needs of our students. And this is one of the questions from one of you. It said people, and in our case, they were talking about parents and children, are becoming more isolated and panicky than before as the news changes for the worse every day. It is. I mean, it is very difficult to listen to the news. And it does change. And it's, I don't know about you, but for me, when I look at China and I hear the news from China, it's very reassuring. It is just seeing that what they went through and what the measures that they took and how successful they were, and talking about children coming back to school and businesses reopening and all of that. It's very hopeful, and it gives us all that sense of there's a light, and they're seeing it, and we need to help our children see that too. But we know that, so children worrying about worrying about what's happening in the world, and this that we can't really explain away because it's new for all of us, and the stress associated with that, worrying about exams, worrying about how they're going to do, worrying about their friends, worrying about their pets, worrying about all the different things that we worry about that causes stress. And then of course that's that isolation that makes it more difficult to cope with all of those things. So we remind our teachers and our counselors constantly that they are the face of the school. They are the face that these children associate with that sense of normal life, the life that they experienced when they were in school, and they play a critical role, and they try to take that role very seriously. And sometimes children will need more help. They will need help from a counselor. They will need to be referred for somebody for more help. And we have great counselors who can provide that. And we want to make sure that our children reach out and seek help and advice from counselors as they need. And we are also going to send a letter home again, reminding our parents of the different resources that are out there. There are some wonderful online counseling services, and that actually are very helpful for not just students, but helpful for adults as well. We've sent this to all of our staff and faculty as well, because there are times when people just need somebody who's outside of their family and outside of their work to talk with. And these are online counseling services that have been recommended. And I want to remind all of you as parents and as members of this community that you have to take care of yourselves first. It is like the the flight attendants on the airline saying, put on your oxygen mask, because it is really important that you take care of yourselves. And we remind all of our teachers and our staff members to do the same, and our admin, of course, because if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of the children that are dependent on us. So these services are available for all of you and all of us, and we shouldn't hesitate, because this is the time when we need to seek out, reach out and seek help. And for your children, for all of our children, just having chats and just talking about life and talking about normal things are really important at this time, because those little chats and those dialogues, they're going to bring you closer as a family, but they're also going to then help your children to talk about things other than what's happening in the world and other than the stress that they're associating with learning and keeping up and so on. Okay, so there's that one. I'm going to start recording the rest of this. We have a question about communication, and we have taken the questions and put them in broad categories. And one is about communication. The question is, and this may seem like an older question now, but it's very relevant. Does any of our SSIS teachers have contact with a teacher from another school who is currently quarantined because that person had contact with the British pilot who went to the Buddha Bar in D2? No, none of our teachers had contact with anyone related to another school in relation to that at the time. And but what we or I should say, none of our faculty members had contact with the teacher from another school who was quarantined. And we sent out the message yesterday about the F categorization. That is the Vietnamese categorization for people who might have been exposed or suspected or confirmed, or any of those levels in relation to contamination from COVID-19. And we will follow that chart diligently. And so even if someone has had a possible connection with anybody in relation to a suspected person or person suspected of COVID-19, or any of the people down the chart that might have met them in a restaurant or whatever else, we will follow up diligently so that we know that we are isolating anyone who might have had contact with anybody who is suspected, or there might be possibility of contamination. And we won't always tell our community, oh, this person is an F5 or F4, because it can be for a day, it can be for a few days. It depends on the situation. But if anyone in our community has then had contact with anybody else, they will always follow up, and they will always contact those people in that line below. So it's a very complex system. It's very comprehensive. We're delighted that Vietnam has such a comprehensive system, and we will follow it diligently. Having said that, if there's ever a case in our community that of a person who is confirmed as having COVID-19, we will let the community know. We will let the community know, and they can rest assured we will always have contacted anybody who might have been in contact with that person. And you've seen that we did that last week when we had our alum who returned from the United States, our college student. So we will always let you know. We will not share names. You can help the community understand that names will not be forthcoming from our school, but we will always have alerted anyone who might have had the possibility of being in contact with a community member who might be confirmed. And we want to make sure that we take all precautions for safety while helping maintain the privacy of the individual. And we will always work with the family that is in question. What I mean by that is that if someone in the family is suspected or confirmed, we will always work directly with that family, and we will communicate directly with that family, and we will make sure that all of our communication respects that sense of our community. We have been very fortunate as a community, and but we are very mindful that we need to have all these procedures in place should any member of our community be suspected of having COVID-19 or being positive. And as a school, with our faculty and staff, we have, if somebody is suspected or if somebody is quarantined, we have procedures in place to help those families and to help those individuals and to make sure that they're well taken care of during that time. But keeping our community safe is our #1 priority. There was a question from another PTA core member. It said, are there other teachers leaving or planning to leave the school apart from the 3 that I have already communicated? As of today, we have 5 teachers who have departed. They have all gone to the United States. They are all maintaining their professional expectations, and they continue virtual learning for all of their classes and support their children and their parents at this time. They are providing that support using the Vietnam time zone. It will be on Vietnam time zone, and principals are ensuring that that is happening, and they're monitoring that these faculty members are meeting their expectations. All of these teachers who have departed at this time, they were all planning to move on at the end of this school year. And they all had positions at other schools, and it's a very difficult time for them because the world is so uncertain. There's so much uncertainty. The uncertainty with what will be happening in Vietnam and what will be happening with their new positions and their new places of employment is a very uncertain time. But their responsibility right now is to your children. Their responsibility is to ensure that they are continuing to meet their professional expectations in relation to your children on your children's time zone. And if we will follow up over the time with them, of course. There's other questions about, I should stop for a minute and say that we have not heard from the government about the expectations after April the 6th. And we are waiting to hear what the plans might be and what the requirements and expectations are. And of course, we will continue to respond to the government's directives and do everything to keep that going. But next week is spring break. And one of the questions, and I do really appreciate it when people hear rumors and they share the rumors with me, so I can either confirm or dispel the rumors. And the question is that, is the education continuing during spring break? So that was a rumor. And no, the instruction and Google Meets will not take place during spring break. Teachers and your children, they should have a break from the demands of virtual school. It is a good time for them just to regroup. We are encouraging them to read. Reading is very important. They can collect books. We want them to be physically active, whether that's at home or right nearby in the park. Of course, keeping social distance, appropriate physical distance from others, and to engage in non-screen activities. So we really encourage them to take the opportunity to rest and relax and take care of themselves, so they are ready for whatever might be demanded of them when they come back to school after spring break. There is an exception, of course. The exception is our AP students. Our AP students will need to continue to prepare for their external assessments, and as they have been defined by the College Board. And so then the question is, of course, realistically, like I mentioned, will we actually be going back to school for the rest of the year? We're waiting to find out. We are ready to continue virtual school, and we are ready to continue having physical school. And we are ready to have a hybrid. We are ready to have a situation where we might have physical school and some students will need virtual school, either because they're quarantined or because they have already traveled and they're able to come back to Vietnam. We are ready for all of those eventualities. And we will wait and communicate those plans then when we hear more from the government. And so that leads to the next question about extended virtual school, if virtual school is extended. And I think this is a question that many of you have. If we anticipate virtual school going to the 4th quarter, then we'd have to plan it on a long-term basis. We have systems that are set up now, and the principals and associates principals, their attention is focused on the quality of instruction and the quality of teaching and learning and the quality of engagement of students. And so they will continue to be in Google Meets, and they will continue to work on taking what we have learned over the course of these last 2 months and really honing that and making it even better. And instead of me telling you what's going to happen at the different divisions, this is the time when I'm going to invite principals to share from their division what they have, what their plans are to ensure quality and quality control as we continue this process, if we need to, over the course of the next 2 months. All right, so I'm going to pause here and I'm going to hand you over. I'm going to mute my microphone and I'm going to hand you over to Dan Keller, our elementary principal, who will talk about elementary school.
Well, good morning, everybody. Good to see your faces, and I'm glad we're able to at least have a virtual meeting. What I'd like to do is share with you how elementary is looking at controlling the quality of virtual school as we continue through the rest of this school year, in case that happens. And I want to organize that in kind of 3 categories. What are we looking at for the written curriculum, for how it's being taught, and then how it's being assessed? I would like to also share, to begin with, that I just received another email from another international school this day in Japan, that somehow heard that the quality of the virtual school that we were providing at our school was high quality, and they were looking for examples and suggestions from us. So while we get good constructive feedback from our parents, as well as lots of praise from our parents, it's exciting that somehow we have other international schools around the world seeking this information. And even one of our teachers recently published an article about what's happening in the elementary virtual schooling. For the written curriculum, let me start with that category. The first is that our teams are collaborating within grade level teams or other teams that they're in to make sure that there is consistency within their team for what they're delivering, and to also share ideas with one another. They're usually collaborating on a daily basis. Then also we have our instructional coaches who are working on a usually weekly basis with each team to look at the work that they're doing as they're going forward, and making sure that we have our curriculum continuing to be vertically aligned between the grades as we go forward. The curriculum initially, as we're looking into the last quarter of the year, we're looking at the basis of the super units in the existing curriculum that was structured, but recognizing that at this point we really need to make significant changes to it. And so our team has been looking at, particularly our homeroom classroom teachers are looking at 4 core subjects of English, math, and then also some science and social studies, and identifying the most important academic standards that our students need to be learning to make sure that they're ready to move on to the next grade level. The next category then is really the taught curriculum. How are we delivering it? The first thing that we're doing to make sure that we maintain high quality is the observation of the teachers as well as the teaching assistants. I'm working closely with the team leads and our elementary leadership team on a constant basis to be helping make sure that their teams are working. And then in addition, our assistant principal and I are working with observing how teachers are implementing virtual school. And we are completing the regular evaluation tools that we've used in previous years with our teaching assistants and our teachers, and giving them feedback done in previous years. Still using instrument quality control. It looks a little different as we're evaluating it in virtual school, but we're in the observation process. The other thing that I'm doing is working on collecting data about how the taught curriculum is being implemented. The first round of data we got was just about what are some of the general virtual school strategies that people are using. And we made that a very open-ended and shared document so that the teachers can begin to learn from one another. Recently, I got more focused on the subject of oral English, particularly written and spoken English. and looking at the various ways that that's being done and asking to get data from the teachers about how much time are they spending using those various strategies. And we're now starting to set guidelines for teachers and grade level teams on how they practice virtual school for the fourth quarter to make sure that students are getting good, solid oral English practice. Break, which we're organizing a special
Dan, your sound is breaking up a little bit there.
They're doing it virtual, basically. I'll speak a little more slowly in case it breaks up.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
The last piece is we're having teachers share the different best practices that they're using between the grade levels so that we can get some cross-fertilization of ideas. We are also then beginning conversations about, if we are in virtual school through to the end of the year, are there any adjustments we may need to make at the beginning of next year for our taught curriculum program? As a simple example, if our early childhood students are not in school for the rest of this year, then they may be entering into kindergarten with a little bit less of the socialization skills of schooling. And so at the beginning of the year, kindergarten might need to take on some of the lessons with our students about how to be in school. The final category has to do with assessment. The first thing I'm doing now is collecting a new round of data from our teachers about, for every student, the level with which that student is engaged in virtual schooling. And with elementary students, it's not just the student themselves, but often the adult support that they have and the family context. If they're still in Vietnam, have they moved somewhere else? Do they have access to internet? Things like that. For students who are having difficulty engaging, we're following up with those families and offering supports and trying to help them solve problems and challenges that they're having so that they can get their children engaged in the process. The third thing we're looking at in assessment is sharing ideas for how the teachers can start doing more what we call summative assessment, so that by the end of the year, if we're going to be doing virtual school through the end of the year, how will we actually complete report cards and what kind of assessments will we do that give us the grades for the report cards. Two other pieces I want to share about assessment. Our EAL and our learning support are doing more intensive gathering of from students that they're working with. Those teachers work with often smaller groups, and so they're often doing one-on-one video conferencing with students and doing more intensive work. And then even with assessment, we're looking at some possible adjustments at the beginning of next year. We may need to start the beginning of next year with some additional assessments if we're in virtual school the rest of this year. So that's kind of an overview of how we're looking at the written, the taught, and the assessed curriculum of virtual schooling in elementary to ensure that if we continue in virtual school until the end of the year, we can maintain and improve the quality of what we're delivering.
Thank you, Dan. And I think you have one of the questions that has come in to the co-host is catching up next year, especially in the younger grades. And I think you've answered that in terms of we will need to, and we'll do this whether they're coming back after spring break or the beginning of next year onto our physical campus, is to do very careful assessments of students and then determining exactly where each student individually is functioning, and then making a plan to address any gaps that they might experience or any catch-up that they need to do. So it'll involve more assessment than we would normally do at the beginning of a school year. We always have assessments at the beginning of the school year, but this time it will be very individual, and then we will develop a plan for every individual student and communicate that, and it'll demand some different practices at the beginning of the school year, certainly. So we will be communicating more about that as time goes on and we know what we need to do. So thank you very much, Dan. And so I'm going to now pass over to Molly, our middle school principal. Thank you, Molly.
Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us today. I think it's wonderful to be able to have the opportunity to talk and continue to get feedback from our PTA and from our country representatives. It's always been so helpful. Every time I walk away from these meetings, I have new ideas and renewed appreciation for the community that we share. So I think a lot of what I have to share is similar to what Dan has said. So if it sounds a little bit repetitive, I promise we didn't share notes. It just is kind of how the streamlining of our work and our alignment of our work has been going on. And it's nice to see that it shows up here too. I think the first thing I want to say is I have no doubt in my mind at all that the quality of education that your children are getting is exceptional right now. And the reason I have no doubt is for all the things Dan's talked about. The meetings that we still have, the collaboration that still goes on, the communication between the teachers, and then the communication between the teachers and the students as we respond to their feedback and we find what is working well for them and what might need to be improved or shifted around so that they can continue to be successful. So we have two different structures that work in the middle school. One is a team, which is a grade level team, and that team meets and they discuss what's going on across the grade level, kind of a holistic picture. And then we have departments, and those departments are by specialty. And those specialty departments like English or math or science, they also meet, and they are the ones who are looking at alignment and ensuring that instruction is still meeting the goals and outcomes that we have set at SSIS. We also have an instructional coach for technology who has really become the instructional coach for everything. And he is really focused on pedagogy and how we can continue the strong pedagogy that we have using the networks and the systems that we have in place. And finally, I think the other major level of support comes out of our curriculum department from David Chadwell, who helps us continue to remain aligned across the divisions, which is incredibly important right now. I think that comes up when you're talking about, knowing that kids are going to come in with a different set of skills, perhaps, than they've come in to the school year with than before. I know middle school, we are anticipating increased levels of resilience and independence and organizational structures, but we may find that there's other things they're not as strong at that we are used to seeing them be strong at. So we will be looking for those, and as kids move from 5th grade to 6th grade, we'll be having those conversations. As kids move from 8th grade to 9th grade, we'll be having those conversations to ensure that the alignment continues and that your children are well supported all across the spectrum of SSIS. Okay, so that's the first part I wanted to share. The second part that is very similar to Dan is as we extend into virtual school, we know we've learned a lot, right? We've learned a lot. So we know that we'll be evaluating Q4, and we're already looking at and have been looking at what is it that we want to be focused on? What are the key standards that we want to emphasize? How does that impact other factors? We, like the elementary school, came to the conclusion that right now speaking and listening is of essential practice. Our students are getting a lot of practice at reading and writing right now, and we are going to put a heavier emphasis on speaking and listening. We understand that many of our students are in the only time they're speaking English is when they are speaking with their teachers, and right now that's not as much as normal. And often they're not even speaking English with their friends right now. And at school, they used to do that all day long. So they've gone from an 8 to 9 hour day of English to much less than that in many cases. So we are going to be increasing that aspect of the work that we're assigning. It has its challenges because many of our students have reported Wi-Fi issues and uploading issues, and all that kind of video and those kinds of Google Meets will present us with new challenges, but we are We think that it's a challenge worth facing so that we can continue to ensure that speaking and listening are growing along with the reading and writing. The second thing that I think is really important is that at SSIS, we have not lost focus on what really is important in our pedagogy and the way we go about education. And so we have not decided that we're going to simplify and only do rote memorization. We are not shifting away from the kinds of high quality instructional experiences that your children are used to and that you're used to seeing. That requires us to be really creative, and it requires us to practice new skills. So I think, though, I want you to know we are committed to that. And I think there's certain examples that I can explain, tell you, like grade 6, they are finishing up their interdisciplinary unit on the Olympics. And really it's about legacy. It's about historical legacy and its impact on the world around us today. And they're still holding their Olympics. They figured it out. They're having a virtual Olympics coming up on Friday. Very excited to see that happen and happen for students. Grade 7, the example I can think of that's easiest for us to envision is actually our tech classes. Now, we do a lot of physical computing and physical making in our technology classes. Well, we've shifted. We've bought new programs. We've put out new materials so that the children can still engage in high-level, creative, critical thinking projects that take them through the design cycle. So that's one in 7th grade that I think is very reassuring. We didn't just say, okay, we can't do it, so we'll just have you read. Nope, we found something, and that is going to be exciting to see as we learn. Now, it's a learning step. All the students in creative technology, that's about half of 7th graders, have to now load something on their machine. We're excited to try that, see how that goes virtually. But it's exciting. And then in grade 8, for example, we did not back away from having the students do their climate change documentaries. It's an interdisciplinary unit between English language arts and science. We have found it's going to take them longer, but they are still doing all the things that they would have done had they been at SSIS physically. They are contacting experts from all around the world, doing interviews and incorporating those interviews into their documentaries. They are building the documentary using many different formats with lots of different kinds of experiences. And I think that's going to be very exciting to see those high quality products come out. And I know there's many more examples, but those are 3 that I thought of easily, of course, because it's just how it's happening. For how our students are still being engaged in critical thinking and high quality instruction and high quality teaching and learning. The other part is I want to make sure, I think that there's also some questions about how do we help support kids as they go through this, and Dan talked about this a little bit as well. So I mentioned it last time, but I'll just mention it again, all the different things that we do. Of course, we have our check-ins by our advisory teachers to their small group advisories. Teachers check in with students constantly about their classes that they teach. The dean of students and the counselor and myself, we also check in on students. Every week, we still send out a weekly student survey, and the students can actually request help, and often do through that survey. We usually get about 15 to 20% of students actually seeking out help that way themselves. Twice a week, we pull our academic data, and that's from missing work to D's and F reports, or just their grade reports, to make sure that we are following and tracking students, because just like anybody in this, they have good days and bad days. They have good weeks and bad weeks. And just because a student has been doing well for a while doesn't mean they're going to stay doing well the whole time. And neither does it mean if a student is struggling for a little while that they can't recoup and get back on track. We have a 3-tiered intervention system. So we have kind of that general level intervention. Anytime a student is missing a few assignments, the advisor is checking in with that student to find out how things are going and to give them encouragement. We have a mid-level, and with that, they're assigned a specific case manager, who checks in with them at least 2 times a week, either via Google Meet or through email. And again, it's usually just encouragement that's needed and helping with prioritization, helping them connect with the teacher for the work that maybe they have questions on that they haven't quite figured out how to get resolved. And then we have a high level of intervention, and this is quite extraordinary. Actually, it's not something we typically need at SSIS because our students are highly motivated, but in this challenging environment, many of them are finding it very difficult. So we have one-on-one case management on a daily basis. Some of those students actually are getting called almost every 15 to 20 minutes to help them manage their time and keep on track. Through that intensive case management, we prioritize their work, we streamline their communication, we communicate much more frequently with parents as well. And that's being successful. And students who are working in that kind of a system, we also are identifying, can they handle 8 courses online at any one time? And so we're making some adjustments there as well. Because what we want is kids to be successful in the core curriculum and their areas of passion. So we are doing some streamlining for those students. All through this, our EAL and our learning support is continuing on, and all of those students are receiving daily support from their teachers. I'm looking at my notes just to make sure I didn't leave off anything. Within all this, anytime a student is missing more than, we kind of pick 7-ish assignments, we're emailing parents every week so that you have a list of it and that you're notified that we have these supports in place and what we're asking for the children to do at that time. So that's happening as well. We do have several students, it's hard to tell exactly any time, but we have students who are out of our time zone now or who have relocated to more remote locations. So where Wi-Fi is even more difficult. So we are working on offline support for them as well as their time zone support. So we're really working hard to support our students no matter where they might be located right now.
Molly,
yep.
There's one question, and I'm not going to ask you to answer this now. I'll come back to you because we want to be sure we answer all the questions that have come in. It is a question about the transition from middle school into high school. And just think, and you can keep it brief, but in the time of virtual school, what might be some of the ways that we can support students as they make that transition? So we'll come back to you after we have heard from Jacob. Okay. Thanks, Molly.
Okay, we've already begun it, so we have lots of information.
Answer it now. That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
Right.
So fortunately, we actually have all this planned in December because we start that process in January. And before students left in January, we were able to fit in 2 of the typical sessions. We have done 2 online sessions, and all of the 8th grade students have submitted their course requests for next year, and the majority of them have been able to schedule one-on-one meetings with high school counselors. So the next pieces of the transition come in the more what has typically been physical, right? They've gone to the high school, they've met with the link crew. So we are in the process of designing and figuring out what that's going to look like online. And this is the similar for 5 to 6, right? We're transitioning it to an online environment. The other thing that we know is that if we are not able to bring students back on campus this 4th quarter, then this will happen in the fall. And we will make sure that we adjust all of our transition programs so that we can still ease them into things. And so we may have to do some different things in the fall in order to make sure they feel comfortable and that they are prepped for success.
Okay.
So hopefully that will answer that question and alleviate fears. We also, middle school is like a time of transition, right? We get 5 to 6 and we get 8 to 9. And we also transition every learning support student. We transition every EAL student who's receiving support in either of these transitions. And so that will also be happening virtually this 4th quarter.
Great. So you've already worked on it. You're continuing to work on it, and the students will help them through the transition because it's critical. It's critical transition.
Absolutely.
One of the things that you've heard from both Dan and from Molly is a sense of streamlining, really understanding what are the absolute critical what areas of the core subjects are absolutely critical to focus on, to assess, and then to ensure that students have learned. And so that's a process of streamlining that we're going through to ensure that our students have the essential and the foundational skills and knowledge that they need as they they come back to school and go to the next level. And Jacob, and we'll ask you to keep this a little brief because you've already communicated a lot to high school parents. So if you want to talk about ensuring quality in teaching and learning in the high school if we continue in virtual school for the next.
Great. I think I can do that somewhat succinctly because my colleagues have shared a lot of things that I think we're doing in common. I'll highlight them briefly because they're pretty, there's a lot of similarity. I'm going to start, welcome. It's great to see your tiles right now. Saw your faces earlier. It's great to see you all. I've never been prouder of a faculty and community that I am of this, of our all SSIS, but in particular working closely with the high school faculty. They have embraced this challenge and are providing exceptional experiences for your kids. And I think it's been very impressive for me to watch and humbling, in fact. They're working, everyone in this community is working for hours, doing lots of amazing things for our kids.
Like we thought they did.
I'm hearing some echoes somewhere. So one thing, as Dan said as well, I've been approached by school districts and schools in the US, Japan, China, and the Middle East, because they've heard about what we're doing here. And as Dan said, it really what we're providing is extremely exceptional. And please be just feel confident about that, that our kids are really receiving quality instructional. So just some overviews. Our curriculum, as kind of Molly and Dan have both said, with our AP and IB curriculum, it's standardized. There's no streamlining there. Our teachers are moving forward and making sure that our kids are ready to tackle all aspects of standards and content and skills that they need. Full stop. They are prepared. We shared the program overviews with our families in February, and we are on track. And students traditionally at the end of March have finished all curriculum in AP and IB. And so we're at that point where everything that all those skills that needed to be covered are covered in those programs. Speaking to our kind of school-based courses that are not externally driven, we're doing some similar things. We're looking for those essential skills, essential content, and essential transition that are vital to make sure that those kids move from Geography 9 to World Studies 10, or from English 9 to 10, that those things are there. I'd say moreover, our community, as our division has worked really hard to embed AP in our grades 9 and 10 classes. Skills that are essential for AP and IB, those are still being implemented in our courses. So when those kids decide to make the jump into AP or full IB diploma, those skills are still being translated and moving forward in the classroom. Our teachers are doing personal check-ins with their advisory students every week. They're continuing their Google Meets. The IB, I have 3 fantastic, in addition to Tim Chute, the assistant principal here. I have our instructional coach for technology, Thomas Galvez, our IB diploma coordinator, Cassie Armstrong, and our AP coordinator, Monica Richardson, that are working very closely with all teachers to make sure they're getting what they need from teaching practices, and also to support them, especially in the AP and the DP right now, with so much change that's happened. And emails coming out tomorrow on that, by the way. You probably have lots of questions, but many of those will be addressed in email tomorrow. They've been instrumental in making sure that we are that the transition to our transition to virtual school is seamless. They're still getting exactly what they need, especially if we move forward for more weeks or till the end of the year as a possibility.
So Jacob, thank you. And one of the things that I want to mention is that we've talked about as principals and associate principals is that the principals and associate principals are the teachers, supervisors, and as part of this process, they actually go into Google Meets and they view the teachers interacting with students. They, look at the lessons. Dan spoke about evaluation of teachers. It's done virtually. They can see what's being taught. They follow, they look at, like Molly mentioned, the missing assignments. They look at the assignments, they look at the quality of the assignments, they look at assignments that are being missed, they look at students' performance, and that's a continuous process, and that's very, very important for parents to know that the principals are monitoring what's being taught and how teachers are teaching. And one of the things that we've been in this process now for 8 weeks, and initially it was week by week because we were waiting for the government to let us know, is it going to be 1 more week, is it going to be 2 weeks? Well, it is, we've learned a lot through that process, and each time we have honed it, and we've heard your feedback. And if we're going into virtual school, I expect it will be a nice longer block like we have this time, and we will plan it accordingly. So we need to plan for the longer term, and then we can always reverse back into physical school easily. But we're going to plan so that we take into consideration what might be the challenges long term. And this is, it's important that we do that and that we have all the procedures in place. One of the questions that came in is how about teachers? How are our teachers doing?
Well, I can start with that.
No, it's okay. I'll answer it.
Are there any high school questions?
Yeah, there are. I'll ask you another one. Let me just answer this one first, and then we'll see if you need to come in another one. So our teachers are like Jacob mentioned, they're quite extraordinary, and they want to do the best job they can so that your children have the best experience that they can experience. And they're getting a lot of support from their principals and from their department chairs and from the tech coordinators, and they really are supporting each other. So just like I spoke earlier on about, worry and stress and isolation, they're experiencing that too, and we're really trying to help guide them with that. And communication is a huge part of it, but also each teacher is set up with a buddy, somebody who is a personal connection to look after them personally, because our teachers majority are from overseas and they're away from family and support structures, and we are trying to provide those support structures here for them and do it systematically and consistently. And then and the new teachers, we will send out the bios of the new teachers, and it's ready. We're sending it out we would have sent it out sooner, but it's a good time to send it out to reassure our community that our new teachers are still planning to be part of our SSIS community, and we keep in constant contact with them. They receive the communication that our current teachers receive when I do a video or when I do a Zoom meeting with all of our current teachers. Our new teachers are invited to be part of that as well. And then we have HR, and I have communication with them. And next week I will have an individual conversation with every one of our new teachers, because we're all trying to in this very uncertain time, we're just trying to keep those lines of communication going and reassuring them that they will have great support in this community. So thank you for asking about our teachers. We all depend on them to make your children's experience a great experience. We had a number of different questions, so I'm going to make sure I answer the ones that just come in. And one of them has to do with admissions, and it has to do with what is happening with it. The question that came in initially was, what is the forecast for our next school year in regards to admissions, enrollment, and all of that? So admissions is continuing, and there is great interest in being enrolled at our school. There is great demand for places at our school, and testing that would normally have been done, English language testing and all of that would have been done physically here. We have a system to do that virtually, and we have a system to really follow up on all of the admissions and the interest in admissions. So that continues, and Katie and our team are right on top of it, and it's working very well. What about re-enrollment from next year from our current SSIS community? So we will send out an enrollment survey, because we want to know we want to know about the members of our community who are planning to continue in Vietnam and planning to have their children attend SSIS next year. We need to have a sense of that. We want to have that. We need to have that re-enrollment survey quickly. And at the same time, we don't want to send it to really to finalize our tuition structure yet, because we would like to have more of a sense of the world, what's happening in the world, what we can expect. And so we will bide our time a little bit. So we hope that you can be patient with us as we determine that. Because we need to look at the different scenarios. We need to look at, if going into this next school year, if we are physically back in school, then what that structure will be like. If it continues into next semester and we have a virtual school, what that might be like, or a hybrid situation, or what that might be like. We need to consider all of that, gather all that information, have that information so that we can make informed decisions. And this is a little early to do that. So we'll do a sense of re-enrollment and the getting as much information as we can on our current population and re-enrollment, and then determining our tuition and what that structure might be for the next school year. And Waimon, is there anything you want to add to that? It's a really a critical question and a very important question for our community.
Hi, Katrina.
Hi, Waimon, thanks here.
I think I would just maybe elaborate a little bit on what you say about your two mission of keeping people safe and keep school going, and the whole business continuity plan. I think you have captured it very clearly that going forward, we need to look at the whole uncertain situation, and then we will decide on what is the right model to present to the parents, right? At this point, I have nothing to add. I think that almost captured everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Waimon. It is we're very mindful that this COVID-19 crisis is having an impact everywhere in the world and an impact in our community. And it has an impact on businesses, and an impact on the economy, and financial implications. And so we're very mindful of that as we do our planning, and it takes time to see what those impacts might be. One of the questions we had was about with the current situation affecting some of the businesses of families at SSIS, they're asking if there are refunds for bus this year, for utilities and materials and fees like that while the students have been off campus. Yes, we will return the bus fees. We will refund the bus fees for all the unused days to those families who have paid for bus fees. We will return, so if you paid for bus fees, the days that students have not been in school this quarter, and if you pay for next year, we will refund all of those fees. And then if school resumes physically, then we can send a new bill for those days where school will be in session. So we will refund those. If there are after-school activities fees that you have paid and there were days that students did not attend those activities, we will refund those fees. We have refunded the fees for Marissa and CSAC and any sports events. We've made a determination that as a school, even though it cost the school money to be able to cancel all of those, that we want to do that for our parents. But the question about utilities and material savings, it's really there were actually any savings that we had from utilities materials. They were used for matters such as upgrading our technology, for extra software. We wanted to set up the best virtual teaching and learning situation, so we invested in that. We wanted to have the best safety and health measures, so we invested in that, and we added an additional nurse, and we added additional measures to our nursing offices. So we added a thermal scanner. You probably haven't seen it yet because we haven't been back on campus, but we have a thermal scanner for scanning our temperatures, and so we will keep that in place all the time that we need it. So it's like an airport thermal scanner. So we really have very sensitive scanning for those who come on our community. And then we have repurposed our facilities for COVID-19 for this world, and that means that we have really ensured that safety of all the windows and the closure of all the windows in classrooms, are being able to open windows in the classrooms should we need that for fans, etc. And we have we're putting air purifiers in every classrooms. These will be there permanently, irrespective of COVID-19, just to really ensure that that environment continues to be a very safe environment. So we're investing in the safety structures and the health structures, and that's where any savings we have from those miscellaneous fees have gone. Okay, so I don't want to mess up my questions here. There was a question about report cards and the criteria, and I'm going to hold that one and not answer it here because it takes a longer answer, and it is something that the principals are working on in ensuring that they communicate the criteria and really clear communication of the criteria for report cards and for reporting on students' achievement. So you will hear more from the principals on that one. So we know we've done that. Now, the other question then is about children's motivation, and that it's difficult to keep children's motivation going as time goes on. And we're very mindful of that, and we all need to be very, very mindful of that, because that's going to affect how they perform. And so, but the question was, what are some of the things that we can do at home to help? So I'm going to go through a few of those ideas. The first one is to provide a clean working space free from distractions. It is very easy for all of us to become distracted. So having that clear working space is very, very important. That was advice we had for our teachers as well when they were then working from home, to set up their working space and have that as you enter into that working space, that is your working space. You get into the mindset, this is my working space. We want to encourage them to have frequent breaks, to set a goal, decide on the task that needs to be done, 1 or 2 assignments, have those outcomes that you're working towards, and then instead of focusing on a whole list of too many, work with your children to say, all right, what are you working on? What are you going to do for the next 30 minutes? What are you hoping as an outcome? And then say, okay, now you need to take a break. Just helping them get into a schedule. Schedules are very important. Routines are very important. It was one of the first things that children missed when they left the physical campus. It was, how did they set up that routine and that structure at home? And then to help students motivated is it really, that's one of the things that teachers and counselors can do, because it is parents, we know parents at home are juggling many different balls in this challenging time, and the main focus of the teachers and the counselors is to work with the children, and so to seek that help, and don't hesitate. It's okay if it's a small matter or a big matter. We want you to ask, because we're here. That's what we're here for. Now, another question then is having, I did that. Oh yes, how is the situation, the current situation, affecting the expansion of the school? And this parent acknowledged, we know it's not a priority at the moment, but it's good to know. And so the current expansion, those additional spaces that were being added in this school year to be ready for August, it's going really well. We're actually, it's going in a very timely manner, because our construction workers are able to be on campus longer and more time each day than they would have been had our children been in place. So that's going very well, and it's really looking great. And we have, of course, the challenge of furniture, because getting our furniture imported is more of a challenge than it would have been previously, but we'll find a way to address all of that. The phase 2, the development of the middle school, then this is the time also when we need to say, we know what those plans are, we continue working on that, and then as time evolves and we have a better sense of the impact of COVID-19 in our community, we'll be able to determine how that should work. Okay, I'm going to bring Wyman in that. Wyman, come in.
I think right now it's also in terms of safety. the architects cannot be here in this part of the world. So as of now, the schematic plan are supposed to be done, but because we cannot meet, and then the government department resources are all geared towards fighting COVID-19. The licensing departments are, so that's not a focus at this point for everyone. I see a delay, which is good for everyone's safety. We should just slow it down a little, but it at this point, again, it's like next year model. It's a bit early to tell. We are still holding on. I am very optimistic because like Katrina, when I look at China, so we are not changing anything at the moment. We are just slowing down a bit because people can't get themselves present in Vietnam.
And our focus and our commitment right now is on your children right now, the current program, and ensuring that they have what they need to make the progress that they need to make. But we're always trying to stay one step ahead. And so we continue to look into the future, next quarter, next semester, and the long-term future. And to do that, we meet every day. So our academic leadership team, we meet every day. The senior leadership team meets every other day. And when we're not here in campus, we do it virtually. And we communicate with the board on a very regular basis, because it is, we want to realize the mission of the school for all of our current students and then plan ahead so we could continue to do that in the future. And that's that's critically important. Going back to what Waimon said about, you mentioned China, Wuhan. So I think, I don't know if everybody's aware, but because Wuhan has lifting the lockdown and working towards lifting the lockdown, international schools in China are asking their teachers and their students to come back. And that's when I mentioned earlier on about that ray of hope, that it is really wonderful to see that. And we'll follow their trajectory. And then I have regular communication with heads of school in China. And they have been a step ahead of us in this process, because those schools were closed down sooner and longer. And so we will also try to learn from them, just like Jacob said that schools are learning from us and people are seeking out our feedback on offering a wonderful virtual school. We also try to learn from other people's experience so we can be very well prepared. And that's one of the things we know we need to do. We need to really get the information that we need, plan, prepare, and then communicate. So we will do that. They're talking about communication. There was a request for a list of reliable news sources. What a wonderful question. It really, we need to limit ourselves and limit our children and what news sources that we call upon, because it's a news source, and we know that a lot of, if it's in the media, they want to sensationalize what's happening. And there's so many very difficult things happening, and so many families impacted, and so many communities dreadfully impacted, that we want to be sure that we communicate and we use the best sources of information. So we will send out a list again. For ourselves, we use International SOS and links that they have sent us, and reliable sources that they use. The World Health Organization, of course, is really critical, and we will send out those sources again to our parents. And just a reminder, this is where we look for our information, and it's very, very helpful. And okay, question I must answer. It's related to graduation, and then I need to finish up here. So the question is, will there be a senior graduation ceremony this year? What a year for seniors. It's incredible. And what's interesting is that there are seniors all over the world, and you know how you build up in you. It's one of these lifetime markers, and you hope that there's going to be something to commemorate this graduation from their high school education and their initial education. And so there needs to be a graduation ceremony. So whatever it takes, there will be a ceremony. There needs to be a recognition that it is a ceremony that is appropriate to the world today. So we have a plan A, plan B, and plan C. And plan A is that is based on the situation being improved, and that we're able to be physically together, and that we don't need to maintain social distancing to the extent that we are. And we have the landmark 81, which we have not cancelled, that is still there. That's plan A. That's a very hopeful plan, and we'll wait and see. Plan B, and I think this is what children, why they're asking the question, because a lot of schools have already said that their ceremony will be virtual. Plan B is that it would be that the situation would have deteriorated, where we have no choice, and we are not going outside our homes, and we're not able to even socially distance because we can't be together. So we have to plan for that too, and that would be a virtual ceremony, and we would have planned for that. And we have a plan C. And plan C is that the situation remains as it is now, where we are able to have social distancing, and we are able to have to be outside our homes. Plan C will remain a mystery for now, because we have to wait and see if it is feasible and if the situation will allow. So my point is that we will always work towards having a plan, and we will do whatever is possible for our seniors to have a ceremony that is a befitting ceremony to celebrate this graduation from our school, and graduation in a year where the whole world is impacted by the incredible challenges that children have never been impacted by before. So we've continued to work on that. So we want to tell the seniors is that we're very mindful that for you especially, this is an extraordinary time, and there's extraordinary demands on you as you prepare for exams and as you prepare for the next step in your career. And you've seen that universities are very understanding. You've seen that the IB is very understanding, AP is very understanding, and we're all mindful of your needs. So tell your seniors, we're going to do our absolute best to make it a fitting ceremony for them, and a ceremony that they won't forget, whatever it is, plan A, B, or C. So you'll hear a lot more about that. So yeah, how many of you, so I want you to put your cameras back on. Those of you who are there, yeah, put your cameras back on so we can see you all again. Thank you for hanging in there through all of that and many different questions and pieces of information. And as you go home to your children, share whatever is relevant from here today with them, and please reassure them that as a school, as a community, that we're here for them. This is the reason we're here. That's why all of us administrators are here in Ho Chi Minh City and here in Vietnam and here with you, is because we're here for your children. And as I said earlier, this is an extraordinary community. And I am actually really, when you look around the world, I'm so grateful that our community is situated in Vietnam and is situated in Ho Chi Minh City, because our government has done such a wonderful job of being proactive and being stringent in its measures. And we have seen how that has been very effective in ensuring that COVID-19 has not spread in our communities beyond what it has. And so as a school, you know, we're going to abide by whatever measures the government determines and whatever measures the World Health Organization determines and international SOS, because we have two goals: keep our community safe and to ensure that we realize the mission of the school as it pertains to your children and the school for the future. So thank you all for being part of today. And give any feedback to Sonia, and Sonia will let us know how we can improve this for the future. We have met, this is our third time meeting since we have been dealing with this crisis, and I think it's very important that we continue to meet with you and that you help us understand what the concerns are in your communities and in the community in general, and we will do our best to respond. And I wish you all a break next week. Enjoy your children. Enjoy this beautiful fresh air here in Ho Chi Minh City and the sunshine, and have some time, have some downtime, and allow your children to have some downtime. Give them a rest, because they're going to be ready to face whatever challenges come up next quarter. Thank you, everybody. Take good care. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and we're a wonderful community, and we're all in this together. So, thank you.